Welcome to another episode of Politics Within Reason. I'm your host, Michael Ham, and with me tonight is Samuel Jennings.
Nothing matters anymore, and we're all doomed. That's the
right.
subject for today.
Yeah, we're not even going to go into the things that really started off this year, right? We've been gone for a while, and we could go into the Wolf Book, we could go into Stormy Daniels, but nothing matters, and so let's not focus on that.
So tonight we've got two big topics that we're gonna discuss. So we're not going to get into the tiny little things. We're going to start off with a discussion about the reason people actually cared and why it really does matter that President Donald Trump called a variety of nations around the world shitholes. And I apologize for using that word. That is going to be prevalent throughout this podcast. Unfortunately, political discourse has declined to the point where we cannot avoid profanity. So if you have small children around, cover their ears or inoculate them to what the president says.
Right.
We're going to move on from there.
Now.
Absolutely. And we're going to move on from there to a discussion about the government shutdown and what that is going to mean for everybody. And I know that's going to affect Michael in a very personal way.
That's right. Yeah. As a government employee, that is actually one of those things that I now have to pay attention to. But yeah, these two things are very interconnected. And so do you want to lay out the shithole comment and what that did to the negotiations that had been ongoing at the time?
Right. So essentially, the shithole comment entered into it. I don't know if everybody remembers, but the Senator Durbin, Senator Graham, and four other senators, 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, had been working for months to come up with a bipartisan solution, basically an immigration measure which would provide a path to legal citizenship for the recipients of DACA protection, the so-called Dreamers, as well as put a little money towards the border funding and keep the government open and do everything that we are currently fighting about right now.
Right. And my understanding was the White House was, to some degree, on board with this proposal for a while.
It's always hard to tell with Trump, but that had been the public messaging and the private messaging towards Chuck Schumer.
Right.
So essentially what happened is, they get into a meeting and essentially Lindsey Graham and Dick Durbin are doing this presentation to Donald Trump. And he is using racy language the entire way through. And at one point says, I don't want any more immigrants from these shithole countries coming to the United States. We don't need more people from Haiti. We don't need more people from Africa. We need more people from places like Norway. And to be clear, that's a paraphrase. We don't have his exact words. That is reported to be the general gist of what he said. Now,
what's weird,
if you want to mention that 2 Republican senators who were in the room disagree, and they say that he called those places shit houses, which I'm not sure changes the meaning.
Come on. No, he didn't. No one has ever said shit house in that context. And actually today, Cotton appears to be saying that, no, I lied. It actually was shithole, right? Today,
right.
He
it
actually
doesn't
appears...
matter. You know what?
But, right, it doesn't matter.
A shit house is a shithole with a roof on it.
That's right. So, exactly. It didn't matter what it was. And the Republicans are trying to change the conversation to try and pretend people are outraged about the word shit, which is not what people are outraged about.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, most of the media conversation, and I don't want to get into this, has been about the perception that what Trump said was racist. It probably was racist. It certainly was racist. He's a racist bastard. And he certainly does hold racist tendencies. But yeah, I think that's been done to death. And what I'd actually like to get into is a subject that doesn't receive the amount of play that it should in this media. And that is the influence of the behavior of the president of the United States of America upon the perception of this country around the world.
Right. There is a lot of value to being perceived well, right? When you are perceived well, people will let you go into meetings. They will listen to you. And we're having a problem. And what's that problem? And I just saw this right now on Axios, I think it was.
Yeah, if we think about it, if you have a country which is perceived well, let's take Japan. Okay, Japan is generally seen as a non-threatening country around the world. Unless you're in Korea, then there are some
Sure.
some historical issues there. But generally speaking, people are not angry at Japan. So Japanese brands do fairly well in developing markets and in Europe and in the United States. You know, people buy Toyotas, people buy Hondas. Japanese companies move into areas and they don't typically draw protests. When the Japanese prime minister calls, you pick up the phone and you have a good conversation. And, you know, you at least pretend to listen to what he says. And then you go back to pleasing your populace through whatever BS measures that you can.
But you will take into consideration what the Japanese prime minister says, most likely.
Yes.
Right? That's
and that to the most part was the case under President Obama, for the most part, even under President Bush,
right,
under President Clinton, under Bush, under Reagan, and all the way back to the beginning of the Cold War. You know, barring a few exceptions, people around the world generally saw the United States in a positive light.
Right.
That has changed precipitously. You know, according to the Edelman Institute, the trust barometer of the United States. So basically, this is a global poll about how people see the United States of America in 28 different countries. That's among the informed public. So we're not talking about, you know, somebody in a village in the middle of nowhere. We're talking about people in cities driving the political conversation, etc. Their trust in the United States has fallen 37%. That is the highest in the world from 2017 to 2018. This is a recent report. And what that actually means is that instead of having a populace which is generally friendly to the United States, we have a populace which is generally hostile to the United States. So they are going to be purchasing less American goods. They are going to be less amenable to their government being seen as friendly towards the United States. Yeah. They are going to be more skeptical about American missions, either charitable, non-governmental organization, or military security arrangements, etc. Yeah. Moving into their nation, and they trust what we say less.
And the big winner here is China, which is up 27%. And I think we're seeing worldwide that our countries are looking around and they're saying, well, the U.S. is flaky and it's hostile towards us, and China is being very welcoming right now. And so it really looks like Donald Trump is turning the world over to China, and that will matter. These reputations are privilege, right? As we were talking about, they let you in the door, and your government is not protested if they are helping the United States in some way, if there's a positive perception of the United States. And now China is filling in that role, and I realize that a lot of Trump supporters are probably ecstatic at that particular concept of the U.S. not interacting with the world, but the reality is that interaction with the world has made the U.S. very wealthy and very prestigious, and all of that's just being flushed down the toilet.
Yes. You know, Africa as a continent, sure, it does not have the first world countries that we would generally think of, you know, world superpowers currently. But there are 1.2 billion people in Africa. Yeah. And by calling the entire continent of Africa a shithole, Donald Trump has insulted people from South Africa to Egypt to Tunisia to Nigeria to the Democratic Republic of Congo and Madagascar, Ethiopia, Somalia. And he has basically said that I don't really care about the national pride of your nations. You know, that's why the president of the United States needs to be incredibly careful when he talks about foreign countries. Yeah. You know, if you go back, you will not hear presidents talk badly about the national culture, about the national pride, about the state, even of countries which are undeveloped and generally not great places to live in.
Yeah, I'd never liked Bush, but he really did go out of his way not to insult, for example, Islam wholeheartedly, the way that Trump just rushes out there to do every chance he can. And the reason these comments were called racist is this, right? It's that Donald Trump decided that the country you were born in superseded everything else, right? Because these extended version of those comments are something to the effect of, we don't want people from those shithole countries coming here.
Right.
Now, whether those countries are shitholes or not, that's your personal point of view. If he was just saying, well, there's shithole countries out there that people are coming from, that's one thing. But to say that the place you are born in is the end all be all of the potential you have, that's incredibly racist, right? Especially when those countries are predominantly non-white. And the country that he shined as an example is very white.
Right, but even moving beyond the racism part of it, because I feel like that angle does get played to death. We need to consider that the U.S. State Department currently has no assistant secretaries of state for regions, so there is nobody going out there and planning diplomatic strategy for Africa, for South America, for Europe, for Asia, for the Middle East, for any of these.
But China sure as hell is. China's out there, making contacts, especially in Africa.
10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, the United States was seen as the diplomatic leader on the world stage.
Right.
The press secretary of the United States would issue a statement about a world event. We would see that statement get picked up by the British, by the Turks, by the Italians, by the French, and it would eventually become world policy. Now, it's popular to ignore the United States of America, and it is that kind of damage to our international standing may be impossible to undo, especially with a diplomatic corps, which is by all intents and purposes non-existent.
Yeah, that's right. And again, this soft power projection, and it might be one thing, right? If you could say, well, we're withdrawing from the world diplomatically and militarily, but we're not withdrawing militarily, right? So we're still out there fighting, but we don't have that soft power to go along with it. And I think that's the real problem here, is that a lot of people who support Trump claim that they didn't want to be out there intervening all over the world, right? Yeah,
that's great. We don't need to intervene all over the world.
And I think it's a fair point to have.
It is absolutely a fair point to have. It's also completely irrelevant, because the thing is that soft power costs nothing more than a little bit of time, some nice wine, some schmoozing with government officials, and a nice PR effort to the people of the nation. And there is no downside to having 1.2 billion people in Africa happy with you. Because if they're happy with America, they're going to support politicians who do not say bad things about our country. They're going to oppose ideological movements like ISIS, which has a significant presence in some African countries, or other extremist movements that want to do harm to our country. So by pissing off this many people for no tangible benefit, President Trump has essentially gone out and made more enemies of the United States and made sure that nobody will listen to us.
So I will actually push back on the no tangible benefit, right? So at least some stories indicated that President Trump went around calling his friends right after the shithole comment got released and was kind of trying to see how well it was playing. He thought it was going to be like a good PR move. And I think it was a good PR move. Like, let's be honest. I think it's a fantastic PR move for his base. And his base just eats this stuff up. They really hate immigrants. They really do.
What's good for Donald Trump's base is not necessarily what's good for the United States of America.
And this is that's
problem. What I'm referring to.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that.
I don't care how pissed off at me that I'm a liberal, that somebody is. I care about this country.
Yeah.
And I want this country to do well on the world stage and to not have to defend itself in the future using military weapons. Because if we can diffuse a situation diplomatically, if we can stop people from shooting at each other and shooting at us, there is no bad part of that.
Yeah, I mean, and this gets to the nihilism, right? That nothing matters anymore. Because absolutely, this is not a crazy theory that if you have soft power out there, your troops get shot at less, right? That's not a crazy idea. And so if you really support the troops, you really should be out there trying to make every single avenue available to make them more safe. And nothing matters, right? That's not that's not how the Republican base thinks. And, what do we do? I don't know.
We cannot control the world with hard power. We do not have enough troops to conquer all the way across 5-6 continents to make sure that nobody dislikes America and that no government is taking action against us. We need soft power, and we need this kind of credibility on the world stage.
And so this shithole comment then leads to a complete disintegration in talks, whether it was planned that way or not. And I sort of suspect it was. There seems to be a movement inside the White House, possibly led by Stephen Miller, who are trying to scuttle anything that resembles helping immigrants in any way or allowing in immigrants. You know, there's just they know that the Ann Coulters and the folks who think like her are going to just be absolutely pissed if there's anything that helps immigrants.
Right. And I think that whenever Stephen Miller's name is mentioned, we need to cut in the sound of a horse neighing. That's a Young Frankenstein reference for you kids out there who haven't seen it. You should probably go see that movie.
Yes, right now. Stop listening to us and go watch Young Frankenstein. It's fantastic. You'll quite enjoy it. Yes.
But so it leads to a breakdown in talks. I mean, the established deal gets thrown out the window, and maybe we could have modified that deal, but essentially the demands from the administration, they got the agreement to expand border security, and now they want additional things on top of that Democrats find unconscionable.
And they don't want to address DACA, for example, when, let's be very clear. So Donald Trump set up the DACA emergency with his executive order, and he had some good points for saying Congress should be the ones to do DACA and not me.
Right.
Except that he has not pushed Congress to do something about DACA. That would be a different story, right? If he was like, look, it really isn't right that we do this through executive order. This should be legislative fix. And there's wide support for that in the country, and probably even amongst a lot of Republicans. You don't need all of them. You just need enough. And so
you're a clean DACA bill, if you put forward the DREAM Act, it would get 75% support in the House, 75% support in the Senate, and Donald Trump would sign it.
Yeah.
But the problem is that the marching orders from the president and from the majority leader in the Senate and from the Speaker of the House in the House have been about taxes, have been about other things, and they have been holding DACA, holding the DREAM Act as leverage over Democrats. So they have made a strategic political decision to not pass the DREAM Act, legislation which almost everyone in the United States supports. If you ask somebody, hey, somebody was brought here at 2 years old by their parents.
They live here, they have a job.
They have a job. We promise them legal status. They've been working productively. They're not a criminal. Oftentimes, they don't even speak Spanish. They've never been to the country where their place of birth was. Should we deport this person just because they're undocumented, because they're quote unquote illegal? Most people will say no, even hard right people, because it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But the showdown now is that Republicans are demanding, in exchange for DREAM Act legislation, funding for the wall, and into the diversity visa lottery program, which is basically a visa lottery where about 9 million people around the world apply. About 100,000 people are randomly selected, vetted by the State Department, and get permanent residency in the United States. So it's a way for somebody in Somalia, let's say, to hope for immigration to the United States. And, it helps ensure that we have at least some people here from every country in the world, except, North Korea or Iran, countries that will not allow their people to apply.
Right. And diversity is a strength of America. We have kicked the asses of the Confederates and the Nazis because we were diverse and not, this like one ethnic group who thought they were all that shit, And
reportedly, they also want an end to, quote, chain migration, which is the most disgusting term that I have ever heard. Chain migration.
So
Here's
cynical.
what they really mean. If do you think that an immigrant who comes over here to permanently immigrate should be able to take his wife, kids, and parents? That's chain migration. That's all it is. Okay.
And they've turned it into a dirty word.
Right. They've turned it into, oh, well, somebody from Mexico is going to come, and then they're going to take all their family members, and then they're going to take their family members.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the United States is Mexico. Well, this is not how this works.
No.
You know, what happens is somebody comes over for work, they get a productive job, they bring their kids, they bring their wife, they maybe bring their parents. And that's about it.
Yeah, that's right. And is that really harming America? Some people think so. I mean, and that's the problem, right? The Stephen Millers and the Ann Coulters, they believe it is harming America. And
right.
It's really hard to say that it's not racism that comes up with that, because once again, like the Norway comment really hit it home, right? It's not that Donald Trump is against having immigrants come in. He just wants them to be the right immigrants who are right only because of where they were born. And that should be anti-American, and it is anti-American, but we're stuck with this for a while because no one in Congress wants to stand up for this, because the Republican base is thrilled by this. They're still at like 80% approval ratings for Trump. It's very high.
Yeah, it was almost 85% the last time I looked it up, with 60% strongly approving. Yeah. So, you know, here's the thing. Here's my hot take of the week.
Yeah, all right.
The GOP is now a party which is holding the government of the United States hostage with a gun to its head, preventing people in the military from getting paid, preventing people who work for the government, like my friend Michael, who you're also listening to, from getting paid, because they don't want brown people to be able to come into the country. Specifically, they want to end 2 programs which allow immigrants to come into this country that are not from Europe.
Right. And then they want to build a giant middle finger to Mexico, right?
Yes.
Because that's how they feel about it. And the thing is, right, so Mexico has now shut down our government, if you really think about it, right? Like Lawrence O'Donnell was making this point, which is that if Mexico were paying for the wall,
the war against decency,
the
war against decency of this country has shut down our government, because Democrats have finally gotten to a point where they have said we cannot move one step further on this.
Right.
We cannot erode the decency of America.
And this is what Donald Trump does to people all around him. He makes them erode their own personal decency as a sign of loyalty. I mean, you know, Sean Spicer is probably the most obvious one. It was just right off the bat. He had to get up there and tell a giant lie for President Trump. And he makes everybody around him do this. He makes Senator Cotton went up there and lied about the shithole remark. And then he said, because somebody asked, did he say shithole or something similar? And Cotton says, no, of course not. And so a couple days later, he says, no, it's shithouse. And then today, finally, he's like, no, it's shithole. I mean, why did you put your reputation on the line like that? You accomplished nothing, but you gave Trump something. And
well, here's why Tom Cotton is doing it, and why the Republican Party is doing it, because I looked up some polling data today. Latest CNN poll came out about 7 hours ago. The state of the Republican base is that they are still overwhelmingly with Trump. 85% of them approve of Trump, with 60% strongly approving. At the same time, trust in the GOP as a party has declined. About 3/5 of the Republican base are angry at both Democrats and Republicans.
What?
That has changed from before the election, where about 1/3 of the GOP base was angry at both Democrats and Republicans. So here's the thing. Donald Trump is retaining his popularity. Senate, House Republicans are not. Every single member of the GOP congressional delegation are terrified of a possible primary challenge from somebody like Roy Moore, you know, somebody who's a hardline Trumper. So they're going to fall all over themselves unless they're retiring anyways, in praising this guy, because they know that's what their base wants.
But it doesn't seem to be getting them anything, right? I mean, the base is like a bunch of mushrooms, right? They like thrive in the dark, and they love being fed bullshit, and it's just outstanding, like work by Fox, right? I mean, I'm so impressed.
It gets them to keep their job, and number one thing on the mind of any politician is ensuring that they get reelected. But beyond anything else, if a Republican comes out and he starts criticizing Trump, they saw it happen to Flake.
They just get,
you cannot get reelected in that climate unless, maybe a Republican out there in the House that's in some rural suburb, which is shifting more demographically towards Democrats. Yeah. Maybe he's going to go out and he's going to say some lukewarm things about Trump, but nobody's going to be the person to fall on their sword here.
No. And I think we're seeing a really huge replay of the 2010 election when Democrats just kind of praised Obama, but not really. And then they just got trounced. I mean, I think that's what's happening here. But I wanted to bring this back around to this idea that the Democrats are finally saying, look, you're not dragging us down with you into this debasing everyone all the time. Like, we're going to take a stand, and they might lose sort of the public perception. Although at the rate news goes these days, who's even going to remember it in like a month? Once the shutdown ends, well, here's the thing. If you remember, we had a shutdown in 2013. Yeah. Democrats won the message on that. By the end of the shutdown, Republicans were generally seen as the people who were responsible for it, and they were. They shut the government down because they wanted Obama to not veto their latest silly resolution repealing Obamacare. Right, exactly. They wanted Obama to repeal Obamacare. I mean, come on.
Right.
That was dumb.
Yeah.
Everyone
it was dumb. But by the election in 2014, it didn't matter. Yeah, Republicans still won. So I don't think Democrats need to be seen as the people who will actually fight for what they believe in. We need to be seen that way because Democrats outnumber Republicans in this country and have done so for decades. Yeah. The issue has always been turnout. And if you go out to the base and you say, we caved and we let Donald Trump deport the Dreamers, you know what? They will say, fuck you. I'm staying home. Yeah. Come back to me when you have a goddamn spine.
Yeah, and that's not completely right, but it's also not wrong. I understand the mentality, even if I think that you're just shooting yourself in the foot, or at least your pinky toe. But okay,
no, I know, but that's what the base is going to think. I don't have to necessarily agree to it. Yep. But that's what the base is going to think, and there's some validity there.
Right, and people want you to stand up to Donald Trump, right? If you believe in decency, they want to see that. And
#resist.
#resist. Right. All right. Well, and so, yes, the government is now shut down. We're in our second day of the shutdown. And right now, nobody looks like they're really ready to give in. And by nobody, I mean Donald Trump doesn't appear ready to give in. I think most everyone else would be happy with some kind of agreement because probably everyone realizes this is not the big win that you're hoping it is, right? It's a couple days of the news cycle once it's over, probably. Like that would just be my guess based on past history. And so here we are. It's shut down. It probably will be for a while. I actually didn't think this one would happen because we've avoided all the previous ones so far with continuing resolutions. And let's be clear, the Republicans, if they could all just agree on something, which they can't, they could just make this happen. They don't need the Democrats.
To be clear, no, they can't. A spending resolution does require a 60% vote for cloture in the United States Senate. Well, so the Democrats can and probably will still block.
Yeah, but if they could get all 51 Republicans on board with some kind of bill, that bill would probably be okay for some number of Democrats in red states. But because they can't even get all 51 Republicans on board at this time, that doesn't look good in the Senate, I should say, right?
No, and the 5 Republicans who voted against it, essentially their objection is they are tired of government by continuing resolution. You can't fund the government on a monthly base. This isn't a stinking car lease. Right. You need to have a yearly budget, and the Republicans still are on Obama's fiscal year 2017 budget. Or is it 2016? I forget what the
it might be worse than that. I honestly don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard. I mean, from the perspective of somebody who deals with government budgets, when you just don't know what the future looks like, it's hard to plan, right? Like you can plan a lot of things, but it's really hard. And so, yes, it's more efficient. It saves taxpayer money. Let's get a year bill. Let's do what Congress is supposed to do. I think it's Australia where if certain criteria are not met, the prime minister gets fired. I think it is.
Yeah, there's some countries where they dissolve parliament,
Yeah. And I honestly,
obviously, we can't dissolve the Senate. We can't dissolve Congress, although that sounds wonderful.
Starting to look
now.
pretty good. I think we could use a new constitutional amendment. And you know, again, if you're listening to the podcast, you know who we blame. But if this just can't get along, I'd rather get rid of the arsonists too, right? Just kick them all out and start over.
Yeah.
And
honestly, I have. If I look at what the Democratic leadership has done, Chuck Schumer has done exactly what he should have throughout the entire Trump presidency. And Pelosi's appear to and be as much as possible a reasonable, competent, firm, but available person out there for negotiation. But essentially what's happened is from day one, the Republicans have refused any sort of negotiation. Yeah. If we're looking at even their signature legislation, the stupid tax bill that was passed, I'm sorry, the tax reform legislation, which is in no way stupid.
No, it's the most amazing legislation ever conceived of. Bigly, yeah, the greatest.
But they did not get a single Democratic vote on that, and they didn't even ask for it.
Yeah, they didn't even show it to them, right? Until it was basically time to vote.
So essentially what the Republicans were doing is they're going out there and they're saying, hey, we're going to do exactly what we want and damn the Democratic Party. Yeah. We're not going to listen to them. We're not going to follow them. The Democrats have realized that we only have one piece of leverage, and that is passage of a budget, because that is still one of the things that requires a 60-person vote. So that is what the Republicans have left the Democrats with. If there was a way that Democrats could negotiate on a non-spending resolution, a non-must-pass resolution, so that they could get CHIP funded and that they could get the DREAM Act passed,
and they tried to propose
funding the stupid wall or whatever, then they do it.
Yep. They even proposed a standalone bill to keep paying the military through all this, and Mitch McConnell shut it down because they need to present to their Fox News base that, and I've seen this all over Facebook today from my conservative folks, is that the Democrats are holding the military hostage for illegal immigrants, right? That is over and over what they're saying, and it's always some, scary looking brown people in the picture, right? There's the wholesome military, and then some scary looking brown people, and that is their messaging today, and it's going to be effective for those people.
And it's disgusting because it is exactly the opposite. Right. In 2013, there was a resolution passed when Republicans shut down the government because they wanted to burn the nation's healthcare system to the ground because rah free market. Yeah. They passed an amendment to that resolution where they allowed people in the military to keep receiving pay and benefits. Right. And Claire McCaskill, a Democrat from Missouri, tried to obtain a similar resolution to get passed, but
Mitch McConnell
it was shot down by Senate Majority Leader, giant fucking turtle face Mitch McConnell.
Yeah. And then they have the gall to try and blame Democrats for this stuff. And anyways, nothing matters, right? So we come back to
nothing matters anymore. None of this is going to matter come November. Get pissed off, go out there and vote. That's all that matters. If Republicans lose the Senate and they lose the House, which is possible, both are possible, then Democrats can do a lot to fix this country. We can hold Trump accountable. So if you aren't registered, go register right now. Find the nearest vulnerable Republican. Find the most credible Democrat who's challenging him and support that person.
That's right. Give them money. Go volunteer. Heck, just like their Twitter or Facebook or whatever social media you use.
Preferably not just like their Twitter or Facebook. Internet activism doesn't do jack shit. Go march and donate.
That's right. But sharing
phone
their
call
messages
if you don't have money.
Help. Yeah. One thing that I think we do have to talk about is that the right wing is really good at getting people's names out there, making them famous, right? Arpaio, for example, or Roy Moore, they're really good at making them famous. And then left-wing media ends up just kind of following the drummer. And that's one thing we haven't been really good at on the left is making these people famous. Like, for example, Jess Phoenix. I'm going to keep repeating her name because I think she's pretty awesome.
Jess Phoenix. Rise up.
Yeah, that's right. She's raising a decent amount of money, but not nearly the amount of money she'd be raising if she was a right-winger who had, like, similarly interesting things to the base, right? She's not raising the kind of money yet that she would if she were a right-winger who were appealing to the base. And
okay, there's a few things here. One is that we don't have any left wing media. There's really no such thing.
Yeah, we are it. So, we are the lone island.
We are the left wing media. It's us, crooked media, and probably a few HuffPo bloggers, and that's about it.
And that's about it. Yeah.
Jezebel.com, I suppose.
I mean, I was thinking maybe this week we could run a whole series of letters from Trump supporters, because nobody knows what Trump supporters thinks. We could do like the New York Times.
Yeah,
that'd be great. Like, no, I'm just kidding. Because, right, there is no left-wing media. Like, maybe Rachel Maddow to some degree and Lawrence O'Donnell, but even the entirety of MSNBC, right? Joe Scarborough, I wouldn't put in there. And so that's one point. I take that point very well.
Yeah, so the point to that is that there are no marching orders coming from a central source like there are with the right wing. That's how they can get Fox News on message with the Republican Party, and they can collaborate to say what they want to say so they have a unified message. The Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that there are many ways to go forward, but only one way to stop progress. And that's why we're always going to see the right be more unified in message and more unified in their goals than the left,
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. We can be the people that kind of battle amongst each other because we're the people that actually want to get stuff done. And if you want to get stuff done, it's a little harder to find agreement rather than just reverting things to the way they used to be in the good old days.
Yep. Even if that's a nebulous idea, what was the good old days, right?
Yeah.
Nobody ever likes to say the exact date when the good old days were. But all right. Well, I think that covers those topics pretty well. Is there anything else you wanted to get into this podcast?
That's about me. If I'm gonna put it this way. We have about 9 months left.
That's right.
Or actually, 10 months left until we can go out and we can vote some Republicans out of office. And I am just looking forward to Minority Leader Paul Ryan. Actually, no, Citizen Paul Ryan,
yes.
Because hashtag Iron Stash. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell getting up there and acting all sad, and Donald Trump having to sit down with Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
So let's all go out there and make that happen.
Amen. All righty. Well, you guys have a good one, and we'll talk to you next time.
Hashtag Shithole Shutdown.
Shithole Shutdown. Nothing matters. Take care.
Yeah.